Hey there, everyone. I just wanted to give you a quick little tour of the town of Kennecott. I just got done taking the mill tour and learned a lot of interesting things. So I wanted to share that with you. Directly ahead of us, past, sorry, we're doing some shuttle loading right here for these people. Um, Directly ahead is the Kennecott Visitor Center for the National Park Service, and then here's the St. Elias Alpine Guides facility. And we're going to walk through here and give you a quick, low down tour here and try to give you some information. So off to my right here, this is the called the Glacier Lodge, the Kennecott Glacier Lodge, and this is a lodge and restaurant, kind of a little bit fancy, hoity-toity place um, compared to what's down in McCarthy. Um, you see these real striking red and white buildings. That is original colors for here, um, and all these things were built originally in the 1910s. Um, People came out here and they found some really stunning deposits of copper, and therein began the mining process. And everything was brought up here um, quite impressively by railroad. And one thing to note is there are still private buildings here as well. The one on the right is such a building. We had a lot of rain today, although the afternoon has cleared up and turned into a quite nice day. But you notice all the potholes that are filled with water. I will be interrupting the video every now and then because we don't need to have periods of me walking and just talking. But we got a couple things coming up here first to take a look at. So up here on our left is the original school building. It's a two-room school, and children were not in the town really when they were first here as miners. The miners were not allowed to have their families here. So what the school ended up being for initially was for the miners to take classes toward becoming citizens. They were a lot of German and Scandinavians, and then eventually this did become a school later on when people did start moving here. And this was a bunkhouse, I think called the West Bunkhouse. This is where the miners would sleep, kind of on the top, and the bottom was like where they would eat and their activity rooms and all that stuff to keep them occupied. And then over here, attached to the bunkhouse, well, not really attached, but next door, this was a building where they used to store cold food and meat. There's also a butcher shop. Not a butcher shop, but a butcher. They would cut up the meat here, and they would actually not use glacial ice. They would actually use a process of putting, I think, is ammonium on the walls, and as it evaporates, it cools the room down. So that's what they would do. And as we keep going here, right here we have a couple different things going on. This building housed the post office, and it also had a store. I did go into both of these earlier, and I have some pictures that I can share along with it. But after doing the tour, I discovered that I was a little bit incorrect on some of the things that I was sharing, so we're kind of redoing this at the moment. And since the other good thing about that is it's cleared up quite nicely. So we can see Mount Blackburn, and I think this mountain here is called Donahoe. And so it's looking quite nice again. Yesterday was stunning and spectacular. Today, not quite so much, but here we go. Here we are. So this right here is the ruins of what used to be a sawmill, and this was apparently one of the first buildings built here, and they used spruce trees, which did not last. But once they got going, they started using Douglas fir, and that was a much more sturdy material to use. Now, as we come up here, we can see the big mine. It's not a mine, sorry, the big mill. It's 14 stories tall. I'll talk more about that here in a minute, and some other parts of the mining process here. But first, here is the train station. This is where the workers could get on the train and go down to the 5 miles down to McCarthy, where they could spend a lot of their money, and they could get booze, they could get ladies, and have a good time. And so we're crossing this bridge, and I do want to point out something here. This is actually used to be a dam that went across, and when they got done processing the ore, there would be little bits of this rock that you see right here left over, that they kind of hedged their bets that eventually there would be a technology to get the little tiny bits of copper left in these little rocks out. And so they basically stored it all here. And you can hear the water falling through. There is a big creek over here. And back when the mining facility was operational, they actually built a pipe to take this water up and over and have it go way out there. That way the water did not get into their mix of potential profits. And at some point, they did get that technology. That technology was developed right here in Kennecott, and it was basically a process of using, I believe it was ammonium again, to actually leach the copper out of what was left of the rock and create like a slurry, and then they would do another process to that to actually get the copper out so they could send it off. Okay, so over here, this white building was a hospital, and interestingly enough, it was the best hospital pretty much in the entire territory of Alaska. Back when this was operational here, Anchorage and Fairbanks were basically tent cities and did not have a hospital of any kind of that was any kind of useful to anybody, so they would actually get on the trains and come out here. Also, the guy who owned the mine did not want his workers leaving, because oftentimes if workers got hurt and had to leave, they wouldn't come back. The red building that is restored over here is another bunkhouse. You cannot go in it. And this red building that's kind of falling down was like a jack of all trades building. You see a little bit of debris there. That was another building that they once upon a time used for some of their business processes, but this creek flooded so many times that it destroyed the building. And up here was another office, and this was kind of where the workers would come to get their pay, and other things were going on there. Now, and I'm sorry we end up not doing many pauses, but now we're going to get to more of the mine here. So to my right is the Kennecott Mill, and this thing is 14 stories. It started off much smaller, and they kept adding on to it, and it took about 3 or 4 years to build the first version of it, and then they kept adding on for years and years, and at some point they finally called it good and made a lot of money from this mine, rather from this mill, but I'll talk about the mines here in a moment. And we did take a tour of this, came out of this hole right here, and we also went into here, and this is where, if you take a look, this is where the material that got dumped in front of the dam would eventually go to for that ammonium leaching process. We got the tour inside, these big vats that you could see where they would actually dump the stuff in, and you had to let it sit for 4 or 5 days in the ammonium, and it would basically, I don't want to say disintegrate, that's not the right word, it would basically dissolve the copper, and then they would get it out of those vats and then put it into another process where they would boil it off, and what was left was just basically a copper slurry, and they would actually bag it up and send it off. Okay, so let's talk about the mill right here. So when we went in, we started off all the way at the top. We took a trail around. This thing is built into the side of the mountain. That's kind of why it's staggered and kind of step-wise, because they basically built the backside of it directly into the mountain. And we started at the top and kind of made our way through the mill, through all 14 stories down to the very bottom. a lot of this mill was decimated after the company pulled out by locals who used it as like their hardware store. They came in and they took parts that they needed and whatever and whatnot. And the National Park Service has been working diligently to try and keep this structure sound. And they are actively doing work on it now. Basically, it's a gravity-fed system. One of the things that made this mine operation around here so desirable was that the ore was very high quality. And there was actually a way for them to sift through stuff. If you can see the red slanted thing in the back, the really good quality ore was pretty much shipped away straight away and taken away without ever being processed. That's how good quality the ore was. The rest of the ore that was not the highest quality would then make its way through this entire big machine to try and get the ore separated from the rock, and then they do as much as they could, and the train ran through there and they put the copper on it, and it found its way actually to Tacoma, Washington. Okay. This building here, they didn't really talk about it much on the tour, but I did go inside. This is another place where they were just doing some mining operations and whatnot. I don't think we did anything with this one, but I want to double check this to be sure. No, nothing in here. You may have noticed that all this old stuff is just sitting here. When the company pulled out, they pretty much just left everything in kind of disarray. There was no need to get it out of here, so why bother? So you will notice there's a whole lot of that around here. It's kind of a little shocking at first, but now it's just become part of the provenance of the site. This was used just kind of as is to store pipes and lumber pieces. They didn't need a wall for any of the sides. And this building here was the old power station. So this is how they made power to run this whole operation. We did get the tour inside of this. I have pictures from inside. Now let's talk about the actual mines. So when this place first became operational, all these trees were cut. None of these trees were here, and that went back quite a bit. Two things. Number one, they needed the lumber, and number two, they were worried about fires. So they felled all the trees and cleared the whole area. And if you look real closely, I'm not sure if you can actually see it in this video. No, you can't see it from here. I thought you could, but you can't. Basically, on the back of this facility at the very top, there was a trolley system or a tram system that ran about, quite a ways up the side of the mountain, and it went directly to a mine. So the workers at first would actually have to walk a few miles up, work the mine, walk a few miles down, and that's how their day was. Eventually, they started actually riding the trolley carts down, which was not safe. Our tour guide actually showed us the waiver that the workers had to sign, acknowledging that they knew they weren't supposed to do that. That was not a legit form of transportation, and if they wanted to do it, it was at their own risk. But eventually, what happened is they actually built bunkhouses, like we've already seen, up at the mine locations. And so there was a mine up there called the Bonanza Mine, named supposedly because when they found the copper up there, it was like a bonanza, how much they found. And then they ended up having two more mines, and all of that trolley system and that tramway system kind of connected up there, and all of it finally merged into one spot and came down into this mill right here where everything was then processed. The mine was operational for about 27 years, and from what our tour guide told us, in those days' dollar amounts, the mine paid out about $100 million, and then made about $100 million, which supposedly, according to him, equates to about 2.2 billion in today's dollars, and that happened in just 27 years. The mine kind of started to putter out toward the end. It just wasn't as efficient, and they were running out of the really good ore they were getting, and so that's what happened. And that's why they pulled out. So hopefully this is something you learned. I learned a lot from this that I did not expect to learn. I learned more about mining and ore than I ever wanted to, but there you go. And I'm going to go up here real quick. There's something kind of noteworthy I want to see. I'm actually probably going to turn the video off for it, but there is a bridge that goes over this creek up here that you guys said is kind of neat to see. There's a couple spots back behind the office here that have been burned down. Can't really see anything there anymore, but apparently that was done on purpose. Somebody here found out that there were people coming up here giving tours, and they kind of started burning the buildings down to try and stop it. Then they discovered that it was more profitable for them to actually leave the buildings here and start kind of taking parts from them. So there you go. Anyway, this is Kennecott, Alaska. It's a National Historic Site for this mine. Hope you enjoyed.